Should Jose Mourinho be the next manager sacked in the Premier League? Let's find out. Welcome back to the episode of Off the Bar Banter. I am your host, Ben Holkman. Today, we're going to be talking about the downfall of Jose Mourinho. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to preface some things. Yes, I am a United fan, so I might have some bias here. Yes, I just watched Manchester United put 3 past Tottenham, and they should have been 4. Let's be honest. That VAR decision is awful, terrible, and I'll keep saying awful and terrible until they come out and say, yeah, that wasn't the right decision, but they will never. So it was always going to be awful and terrible. But in this video, we're just going to look at everything objective. I have my notes, pages of notes. So let's get right into it. So we're not going to start with the Chelsea 2015 to 2016 Chelsea. A lot of controversies around it. It wasn't the biggest. I'm not in the know of what happened to Chelsea. I know that there was a lot of different things that was happening at the time, so I don't really want to talk about that. And the year before, he did win the title. So is that really a fall off? You do expect the third season slump with Jose Mourinho. Now, he took over Manchester United in the 2016-2017 season and had a net spend of negative $151.53 million. In the league, he won 47% of his games. He drew 34% of his games, which would be 15 out of the 38, which is unbelievably terrible. He had a 25 goal difference, which was bettered by 5 other teams, which are the 5 teams above them in Arsenal, Liverpool, City, Tottenham, and Chelsea. In Europa League, he finished second in the Europa League group, losing to Feyenoord and Fenerbahce. They beat teams like San Etienne, Rostov, Anderlecht in extra time. Celta Vigo because John Guidetti couldn't hit a brick wall if it was right in front of him. And an Ajax team whose average age at that time was 21.3 years old, and their main defender, who was Matthias de Ligt, was 16 years old. In the EFL Cup, they went through Northampton, Man City, West Ham, Hull. The second leg they lost against Hull, and they almost lost to Manolo Galbiadini in the final against Southampton. If it wasn't for the fact that Zlatan Ibrahimovic might be a deity. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, so those are the 3 that I wanted to talk about that I think a lot of people champion Mourinho for. Besides the Community Shield, which he was just kind of placed in the position that he had to play the Community Shield. With the league, yes, it was demoralizing, but you kind of understood that team wasn't as good as everyone thought it was. But the fact of the matter is, you went into that season buying Pogba, Zlatan, Eric Bailly. Those 3 guys were marketed to us and were marketed by the coach, by Mourinho, as the guys that would turn United around and win the league this season. Many people had them winning it. Many people had them winning the league. It was either them or City, and it ended up being Chelsea because no one understood that Antonio Conte is a pretty good coach. So that was kind of a disappointment to some extent, especially with 15 games drawn. You can't justify 15 games. You can't justify drawing 15 games, especially the Swansea game where you're 1 goal ahead and Ander Herrera takes himself off the line of the Sigurdsson free kick, and Sigurdsson's free kick goes in with this exact place that Ander Herrera left. I don't know how. I remember being so upset about that game. The Arsenal game where I think Giroud won it and Giroud drew it in the 90th minute or something. That game was also terrible. I can remember them because I was so pissed because I was like, how can you lose these games? Like, how can you lose 2 points there? But then fine, let's go on to the second season. Of course, we all know that in the second season, Jose Mourinho usually he plays well. Usually that's when his team starts winning all the titles. They're in the Champions League because of Europa League, and they banked heavily on getting the Europa League title. Negative 168.19 million, I should say, in 2017-2018. They finished second in the league. They won 66% of the games and drew 16% of their games. Had a plus 40 goal difference. Had to play against the Centurions, so fair enough. I mean, when you play against one of the all-time greatest teams in the Premier League, it's kind of difficult to win that league. So I can understand that. However, the one discouraging thing was that Liverpool, a team that finished, I believe, 4th that year, had a better goal difference than them, which shouldn't happen. And remember, this is the same year that Alexis Sanchez came in. This is the same year that David De Gea turned into another deity in goal and was, I don't even know if arguably, I said Buffon probably could have won Team of the Year, but David De Gea was probably the best goalkeeper in the world. I mean, he was the reason why we got second. Let's be honest. In the Champions League, they topped the table with Basel, Benfica. They topped the table with Basel, Benfica, and CSK Moscow, but famously lost to Sevilla at home. Basel, Benfica, and CSK Moscow, but famously lost to Sevilla at home. Drew away and lost 2-1 at home. I don't know how you do that. In the FA Cup, they went through Derby, Yeovil, Huddersfield, Brighton, Tottenham, and lost to Chelsea in the final in one of the most uneventful games. Phil Jones led up a penalty and Hazard converted, and it was 1-0. I mean, you could at least put some fight in it, I guess. In the EFL Cup, they lost to Bristol in the 5th round, beating Burton Albion and Swansea. So the reason why I tell you the team that they've beaten is to show that, yes, they won stuff, and yes, they went far and stuff, but they didn't beat great competition. They didn't go up against, like, Man United's run to the Europa League now is already more difficult, in my opinion, than Man United's run to the Europa League champions in 2016-2017. Now, in Manchester United 2018-2019, he had a net spend of negative 57.37 million. Yes, you can chalk it up to they didn't back him this year, but you do also realize this was some. You can say, okay, fine, it was some of the board being idiots, giving Jose Mourinho a contract extension, knowing full well that third season he does not do well. And in the third season, before he got sacked, he won 41% of his games, drawn 25% of his games, and lost 33% of his games. Left United when they were 6th in the table, barely got out of the Champions League group, lost the EFL Cup in the 3rd round of Derby County. Solskjaer would take over, finish 6th, getting to the quarterfinal of the Champions League. I think they got to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup that year as well. So improvement from that point on. You also have to realize that during this time, players like Anthony Martial, Paul Pogba, Jose Mourinho took over Tottenham. Mauricio Pochettino took this team to the heights. Should have won if it wasn't for the fact that Leicester were just so dynamic and different. And if it wasn't for the fact that they did bottle against West Ham, they were always in title races. I have never once in this, besides the brief beginning of the season, this season, have heard Tottenham in the title name, Tottenham's name come up in the title challenge. I haven't. Well and truly, I haven't. And that's not me being mean. That's just me saying what I haven't heard. Speaking of 2020-2021 Tottenham, they had a net spend of negative 106.92 million. In the FA Cup, they lost in the 5th round to Everton after beating Wickham and Marine. I think that was who they beat. Hold on. I think it's called Marine. I'm pretty sure it's called Marine. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, Marine, which I never heard. Yeah, I never heard before. In the EFL Cup, they're in the final. I'll give them that. They're in the final against City. They did beat Chelsea. They beat Stoke and Brentford, so it wasn't like they were going through major competition besides Chelsea. And that was Frank Lampard's Chelsea, not Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea. So, I mean, there is a difference. Europa League had to go through qualifying, topped the group, but lost to Dinamo Zagreb in the round of 16. I don't know how you do that, but that's just it. And now apparently his name is on the chopping block. And for someone who lives in the past more than almost anyone else, Jose Mourinho should have seen this coming. He should have. He presents an illusion to the fans of grandeur and winning. The United treble, which was the EFL Cup, the Europa League, and the Community Shield, and the EFL Cup final for Spurs. He manages horrible football, as it even looked. Look at the last game they played against United. The last game they played, which was against United, as per recording, they looked in that second half after going 1-0 up after BS from Son. They looked as if they were scared puppies, not wanting to try anything. Their best chance were 2 United players heading it into their own goal. Like their best chance that game, was the best chance that second half. He stunts the growth of players in Dele Alli, Luke Shaw, Martial, Marcus Rashford. You could argue, you can keep arguing everything else. He makes horrible business decisions on the other end with Sanchez and Bale. And he's going to go, and let's be honest, he's going to go to Daniel Levy and he's going to go to the board and ask for more money if he doesn't get sacked. He is. Because that's exactly what he thinks he's going to need, and that's exactly what he thinks he's going to want. If you are Tottenham Hotspur right now, you have to sack him. Been this year. Been it. He has been a disgrace to follow Mauricio Pochettino. The fact that Pochettino built that team, and yes, they weren't successful in the league. They weren't successful in winning trophies. But they played amazing football. Personally, to me, there's no Jose Mourinho is one of the most overrated coaches in the history of the Premier League. There's not even job scarcity. I'm sure there are other coaches out there that are probably more willing to take on a project like If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. I have been Ben Holkman. This has been Off the Bar Banter. That's all for me, and that's my opinion. Personally, I think Jose Mourinho is one of the most overrated coaches in the history of the Premier. But if you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. I have been Ben Holkman. This has been Off the Bar Banter. Thank y'all for watching, and peace.